Hey everybody, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Total Ramblings. We're going on a little walk today. It's Saturday, February the 22nd, and it's the first day of the year that it hasn't been either freezing cold or raining, and the sun's out and it's about 12 degrees and it's lovely. And thought I'd go for a walk. There you go. Here's a thing. We are coming up to the first anniversary of this vlog. On the 11th of March, we will be at the first anniversary. And this is episode number 236. Now, by my estimation, we've done 235 episodes so far. That's one episode every 1.472 days or something like that anyway. Well, that's what it was yesterday when I looked it up anyway. So, 235 episodes in just under a year, 236 with this one. I think that's pretty good. I think I've got my money's worth out of my cameras that I bought. It's kind of a bit of a chicken and egg situation. I bought a camera to do vlogging, and I decided to do vlogging because I bought a camera. Basically, with Liz being in hospital, I've obviously got far too much time on my hands. Needed something to kind of express my frustrations and my thoughts. It's easier than talking to people who I find to be very complicated, and that's my excuse anyway. Hello. Very fluffy dog and his man. Yeah, so I don't know, we might be at something like 240 episodes by the time of the anniversary, I don't know. It's not far off, it's a couple of weeks off. So there we go. Anyway, I've just tidied the house and I found this. It's the Sounds of Thunder Annual 2019. We made it in 2018. Soft Sounds of Thunder was like a Big Finish type audio company run by Helen Sterling Lane, who was a friend of Siobhan's and thus became my friend. And she set up this company called Sounds of Thunder to do audio productions. Siobhan was the producer. I'm not quite sure what her title was, but anyway, she asked me to write some stuff. I'm going to go and get this ball for these guys. I assume it's their ball, they're not running after it anyway. Let's try another kick. Sorry, I'm not very good at kicking. And yeah, so I thought maybe it was time that we talked about Dr. Sinister. And who is Dr. Sinister? Dr. Sinister, for many, many years, was my online alter ego. I created Dr. Sinister in the mid-90s when I was house sharing with my cousin Tom in Portsmouth. And I wanted an online persona. Now, his name had to begin with S because my surname begins with S. So Dr. Sinister it was. I didn't know at the time. I think I kind of ripped him off of Dr. Evil. He was going to be Professor Sinister, but I wanted Doctor because of the Doctor Who connection, right? Doctor and S. Summersgill, Sinister. And Dr. Sinister has an eye patch on his left eye, and he has a cybernetic left arm, which, now that I look back at it, is clearly based on Travis from Blake 7, but I didn't know that at the time. It wasn't conscious. And the reason he has these cybernetic accoutrements is because of something called the incident, which isn't talked about. However, I can exclusively reveal to you now, my headcanon is that Dr. Sinister likes to keep dinosaurs as pets in dinosaur pits in his vast base under the ground, and allosaurs in particular, mainly because I wanted to avoid the Tyrannosaurus stereotype, and allosaurs are very close. But he keeps dinosaurs, and in my head he was attacked by one of those dinosaurs. Dr. Sinister is also a clone. As soon as Dr. Sinister dies, his memory is uploaded to a new clone. His memory, right up to the instant of his death, is uploaded to a new clone, and a new clone is reactivated. And I think I stole that idea from a series of books. They were the Sten books, where they had a character called the Eternal Emperor. Actually, no, I can't have stolen it from there because I didn't read those books until the early 2000s. Pure coincidence then. Anyway, yes, Dr. Sinister is a clone. His full name is Dr. Augustus Julius Sinister, and it also depends which version of Dr. Sinister you're talking to, because I think at the moment we're on Dr. Augustus Julius Sinister the sixth clone. There are also multiple versions of Dr. Sinister, and they each exist in their own universe. So, for example, there's a Lego version, and he has a Lego mansion and Lego minions and Lego bodyguards that I once documented. They're on Flickr somewhere in an album. All of Dr. Sinister's bodyguards, they've all got backgrounds. There's an Action Man version of Dr. Sinister with a couple of Action Man minions, I suppose you'd call them, in orange overalls. And there was an Armchair General version of Dr. Sinister. Now, what was Armchair General? Armchair General was a US magazine created and owned at the time by a man named Eric Weeder of Weeder Pharmaceuticals. And the Weeder family, despite being massive in sort of body supplements and muscle enhancement stuff, they were also, one of their hobbies was military history. And Eric set up a magazine called Armchair General. And very early on, through an acquaintance of an acquaintance, I got involved with Armchair General, and I ultimately became the online military history editor for Armchair General. And I was also chief administrator of their forums, which had over 15,000 members at the time. This was an evening job, a weekend job. I did genuinely get paid. I think I got about $250 a month as a stipend, as they called it. They even flew me out to the States for a convention once. Amazing times. And I wrote over 100 articles for Armchair General, the website, not the magazine, although I was in the magazine a couple of times. And I also edited over, I think it was over 150 articles written by other people. Edited those. That was my job. Now, one of the series of articles I wrote featured Dr. Sinister, so there was an armchair version of Dr. Sinister. Now, let me tell you who Dr. Sinister is. Dr. Sinister is an evil genius, although remarkably ignorant about the everyday workings of the world. For example, in the Sounds of Thunder version of Dr. Sinister, for he is yet another version, he has trouble differentiating the sex or determining the sex of his assistant, Derek. Her name is actually Desiree, but he calls her Derek. He's got no concept of male or female, not in a nasty way. It's just a simple fact that's beneath him, and it's irrelevant to him whether you're male or female. So he calls Desiree Derek. Anyway, we'll come on to that. So Dr. Sinister is an evil genius. He has an island base somewhere off the coast of West Africa, which is constantly shrouded in mist, artificial mist, and therefore hidden from the universe, from the world, from satellites. He also has a fleet of submarines, which the EU paid for, because he basically got a grant from them. Now, this was all documented on the www.blablabla.co.uk website, which was my official website. I still own that domain name, blablabla.co.uk. I've owned that domain name now for nearly 30 years. There used to be a website there. You could also get to it through sinisterincorporated.co.uk, but now there is no website there at either of those addresses. I just use it for my mail. So you can write to me at ajs@blablabla.co.uk and it'll get to me. I often have to convince people in shops when they're asking if I want an e-receipt and convincing them that yes, this is actually a real address, because it is. And I've been waiting a very long time for someone to offer me millions to buy this domain name, but they never have. So I've still got it. I used to also have tabletown.co.uk. Tabletown was my Lego town in my garage, in which my comic books that I've published, The Adventures of the Astounding Pizza Man, they're set in Tabletown. The other book I published, Grunts and Everyday Stories of Army Folk, that was a 4-panel comic strip that was set with the Tabletown Armed Forces, and Dr. Sinister there was the mayor. So that's where the Dr. Sinister version comes in. So Dr. Sinister, he has, of course, aspirations of world domination, and to him money is no object. And essentially this is a common feature across all versions of Dr. Sinister, whether he be made of Lego, whether he be made of Action Man, whether he be human, and whichever version of the clone you're dealing with, whether he be the soft version of Dr. Sinister or the armchair general version of Dr. Sinister. They're all the same person, essentially, but some of them occupy different universes. So, as I say, he has this island base and a population that he controls. Also, Nation States, which is a website, which is like a game that you play. I've been playing that game for well over 20 years. Basically, you set up a country and you get daily questions and you enact policies and you kind of steer your country. And sometimes those policies will have unintended consequences. My nation, Sinistrius, is still running. That's another version of Dr. Sinister. We have a population of 49.675 billion, the last I looked, because that's how long the game's been running for me. It's a corporate police state. The national animal is the mutant. The currency is the nuclear missile. Anyway, so I realise I'm rambling a lot here, but this is total ramblings. Dr. Sinister came to fruition in the mid-1990s, and my housemate, my cousin Tom and I, we declared independence. We named our state after a Terry Pratchett country, Jelly Baby, and it was Jelly Baby House, and we were the smallest country in the world. And the reason we could maintain our independence, this is the law, is because we had nuclear weapons in the loft. And I created Dr. Sinister as kind of the ruler of that city-state, which was a terraced house in Southsea, albeit the presidency of Jelly Baby was determined by who last did the washing up. However, that was generally me, so I was generally the president of the state. And of course, as soon as I'd done the washing up, my immediate policy was to declare war on China because they weren't very powerful. Joke. Anyway, we created the blah 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 website, and on that website we had stuff about Sinister Incorporated, Sync, which was Dr. Sinister's company, of which he was the CEO. And we would have, silly stuff from Sinister Incorporated. We had some of my stories on there. And that website lasted for quite some time, at least 10 years, I think. Through a few iterations, I would modernise it every few years. And then eventually I just shut it down. So, that's Dr. Sinister, an evil genius, somewhat naive, and will go with any crackpot idea, ultimately wants to achieve world domination, was so powerful as a supervillain he had 2 cats. They had their own page on the website as well. Fox and Dana, my 2 Siamese cats. Yeah, so anyway, different versions of Dr. Sinister. The live version, me. He has a twin brother, Professor Saintly, also me. The Lego Dr. Sinister, the Action Man Dr. Sinister, and the Armchair General Dr. Sinister. Now, where does the Armchair General stuff come in? Well, I mentioned earlier that I wrote over 100 articles for Armchair General. And about 50 of those were an article I wrote with a guy called Jim Marino. And they were called The Incorrect Art of War. Now, this was a comedic series. And the title, there was a game, a very popular game amongst war gamers called the what was it called? The something art of war, the tactical art of war, or the total art. I can't remember now. It was in my head just now. It'll come back to me in a minute. Anyway, it was called the Operational Art of War. TOAW, the Operational Art of War. And we called this series The Incorrect Art of War. And in that series, Dr. Sinister would discuss with his long-standing, long-suffering General Menace, about military ideas. So a stupid example was dropping main-sized battle tanks out of planes, landing them on enemy territory and expecting them to be able to drive off and fight and immediately winning the war. Another idea was building trenches around Sinister Island because Dr. Sinister had just watched something about World War I and decided that trenches were invincible. And of course, General Menace has to talk him down. The idea of this series was that you learn a little bit about military history. You have a laugh at Dr. Sinister's expense because he's so out of touch with reality. And, you have a laugh. And we wrote about 50 of those. I ended up finishing these series on my own. I think Jim had gone by then. Disappeared somewhere, we don't know where. And the final episode, Dr. Sinister, it's like set in the future. Dr. Sinister has finally, in fact, conquered the world. And now he's bored. He's got a tower that's a mile high where he lives. He's got an apartment up there. The whole world is in his thrall, and now he's bored. He's crushed all dissent, all civil wars have stopped. So in the final episode, he's invented a time machine, and he goes back in time with his 2 cats, who in real life were dead by now, unfortunately. He goes back in time with his 2 cats to do it all again, because it turns out for Dr. Sinister, it was the challenge that he relished. And that's how the series ended. Now, I've got all of those published in a book. I've never actually published the book. It's available as a PDF. I was loath to properly publish it because technically I got paid for those stories by Armchair General. And I'm not really sure I'm allowed to profit from them any more than I have already. But if you want a copy, I'll send you them. Like I say, it's about 50 episodes, maybe not quite 50. Like I say, the idea was a bit of military history education, a bit of a laugh, and I could build up the character of Dr. Sinister. And I did that for many years. On the forums, I was known as Dr. Sinister, and you know, I remember offering people countries. I'd say you can have Canada if you want, if you follow me. And it's kind of amazing actually how, I'd like to say it was a social experiment, but it wasn't. But it's kind of amazing how many people will go, yeah, I'll have a country. In the aim, if just by following an evil dictator. Is that relevant to today's world? You tell me. Anyway, that was the Armchair General version of Dr. Sinister. So there's loads and loads and loads of Dr. Sinister lore that I haven't mentioned. Like, for example, in the forum discussions, we established that Dr. Sinister's plane, car, helicopter, Polaris missile ships, they're all black with a black stripe. That's the important bit. They're black with a black stripe. And also Dr. Sinister's favourite method of execution was the wood chipper. And we had TV channels, the torture channel, the execution channel, and it was all obviously satire, but it kind of allowed me as Dr. Sinister to say things that I couldn't normally say as myself. He believes things that I don't necessarily believe, and I think I would be totally alien to Dr. Sinister. But anyway, that's the background. In a minute, I'll get to the point. Now, what happened was, about 10 years ago, more than about 10, maybe 11, 12 years ago, we had another version of Dr. Sinister in the Flashing Blade Vidiprog, which I did with Siobhan. So Dr. Sinister was a host on... I started writing to the Flashing Blade podcast, and then eventually I became a host on the show, a co-host as Dr. Sinister, or that's what they called me. And then we did the Flashing Blade Vidiprog. And I can't remember how many episodes it went on for, about 65, something like that. They're all online. That was with Siobhan. That was as Dr. Sinister, with an eye patch, with a gloved hand, in my underground base. When people ever come to my house, which is rare, I like to say, you might imagine that you are in a simple lounge in a house in Basingstoke. In fact, you are at the centre of a vast 1,000 wide kilometre sphere, which is my base of operations, deep within the earth. And when you cross the threshold of my house, you are teleported there. And this room is at the very centre. Anyway, that version of Dr. Sinister hosted the Vidiprog, and I edited that. And then what happened was, I took somebody to court because of, shall we say, historic events. And during that court hearing, I was declared a fantasist, and Dr. Sinister, the character, was used against me. The barrister on the other side said that I was incapable of separating fact from reality, and that my allegations were therefore could not be relied upon. I'm very capable of detaching fact from reality. In fact, Dr. Sinister was created as a vessel almost for some of my daily frustrations, but I was well aware that he's a fictional character, albeit with so much lore behind the scenes. The guy I worked with at Armchair General, his name was Brian, he once said to someone else that he's known many people with online personalities, but nobody had gone to the extent that I had gone to with Dr. Sinister, with the background lore and all the information. People would ask me questions about Dr. Sinister and I could answer them, even if I hadn't thought about it before. I think that's where the black with the black stripe thing came from. People would say, what sort of car has Dr. Sinister got? Well, it's black with a black stripe. So, you know, little things like that. And they gradually built up over the years to create this lore of Dr. Sinister. So I'm well aware of separating fact from reality. But Dr. Sinister was used against me in court. And I'll be honest with you, that killed him for me. I decided to kill him off. Not literally, I just stopped referring to myself as Dr. Sinister. So My Flickr account, changed it to my real name. Other social media accounts I changed to my real name. You might still see the name Dr. Sinister around occasionally, but that's essentially what I did. So yeah, I took the website down. It was no longer fun to me, because something that was fun, that was an outlet for me, for my frustrations, and to say things that that I couldn't normally say. Not necessarily, not all the things Dr. Sinister said were things that I believed in. I deliberately exaggerated him as a character. But anyway, I closed him down. I killed him off. At one point I had Dr. Sinister merchandise. I had a clock, which is still in my office or in the dining room. I had badges. I used to give out badges. Dr. Sinister is watching you. One of them ended up on the wall where I used to work. There were Sinister Incorporated button badges. Gave out so many there. My business card was Sinister Incorporated, was in the name of Dr. Sinister. This court thing happened. I lost the case, by the way. And I stopped being Dr. Sinister. Not that I ever was truly him, but I stopped using him. And I just became me. And I became more boring. And I redid my business cards. They no longer were in Dr. Sinister's name, they were in my name. And then, coming up to the point now, I found this today while cleaning the house. The Sounds of Thunder Annual, 2019, recorded in 2018. Siobhan was producer or some kind of official role in Sounds of Thunder. Helen was the boss. And Siobhan said, oh, that's another thing. Let me just backtrack slightly. During the time of the court case, I also stopped doing the Vidiprog. I used to edit that. It was an edited show, unlike the more recent iteration, which is a live show, which is then put on YouTube. We used to record it, and I'd edit it, do all the special effects. Two things happened. One, a guy called Jason Andrew Davies, who I thought was a friend of mine, put a comment on YouTube saying it was the it had the worst production values of anything he'd ever seen. And I took a lot of pride in making that. And that crushed me. You shouldn't listen to bad feedback like that, but it crushed me because, number one, I thought he was a friend. I knew him from the Lego community. And number two, I took exceptional pride in making that series. And I thought the effects and the sequences and the subjects and everything that we had were very good. I thought that program was ahead of its time at the end. And secondly, the upcoming court case kind of sapped all my energy and my thought processes, and I needed more time. I needed time to think. I needed fewer distractions, and that's why I stopped doing it in the end. And I wish I hadn't, in light of what's happened in the last couple of months, because that could have gone on for a very long time, but it didn't. So that's the two reasons I stopped doing that. So that in that respect, Dr. Sinister died. And then, as I say, I killed him off after the court case. Anyway, in 2018, this was a few years later, I was made redundant from my long-standing employer, Zurich Insurance. I'd been working there for 27 years. And I was at a bit of a loose end. And Siobhan and Helen were going along with Sounds of Thunder. And they said their first release was going to be an annual of stories. Would I like to write some? And I think I wrote 5 or 6 Dr. Sinister scripts, very, very similar to the Armchair General stories. But I didn't use General Menace because that was Jim's character. I used Desiree, who Dr. Sinister doesn't realise is called Desiree and calls her Derek because he's got no real concept of male or female. These little things are beneath him. And I wrote 5 or 6 stories, and 2 of them are on this CD. We've got one called Christmas on Sinister Isle, and another one called The Wachu of Death. And I think we were going to have everything, apart from the first episode, everything was going to be the so-and-so of death. And essentially it follows the same format as Armchair General, except the emphasis is not so much on military history now. It's about ridiculous ideas and Derek, Dr. Sinister's PA, trying to talk him down from those ridiculous ideas. And this was the first release, and we were going to do lots of them. I think a third one got recorded but never had the sound effects. The third one was set on an artillery range or a missile firing range, and I think the sound effects there were going to be quite challenging, and I wrote it deliberately so that would be the case, to mess with the sound engineer. Anyway, that's where Dr. Sinister appeared there, and you can see him on the cover at the top there. Now, Dr. Sinister was played by Alistair Locke. Alistair Locke is a well-known person in audio circles and other circles. He played Zen in Blake's 7 stories from Big Finish and other characters as well. He also did this, I think he did the CD mastering on this. Also, it turns out I've got a long-standing connection with Alistair I didn't know about. In the late 1980s, I was at a Doctor Who convention. I think it was Falcon in Bath, and there was a Dalek there named Salvador. And one day we put Salvador in the lift and sent him up to the top floor, where I think he scared the bejesus out of an American tourist. Turns out Salvador was Alistair. He was inside it, or he owned it at least. And I never knew this until recently when I met Alistair at the recording of these stories. And so as I say, this brings us to today. I found this and I thought it was time to give you a potted history of Dr. Sinister. There's probably tons and tons of stuff I've missed out. There's tons and tons of lore I know I've missed out. Tons and tons of history and things that have happened with the Dr. Sinister character that I've missed out or forgotten about. But here he is in audio form, albeit not played by me. And I just thought it was worth a mention because as we approach, it's almost like I've planned this vlog, isn't it? As we approach the first anniversary of this vlog, one of my earliest stated intentions was that I would one day be digitally recreated using my vlog and my writings and my memories, and that one day I would be reborn in the future in digital form, because if people took all of my writings and my articles and my letters and my vlogs and everything, they could probably create a reasonable facsimile of me in the future. And if we're going to do that, then you really, really, really need to know about Dr. Sinister. You really do. And now you do. So this is an important episode of Total Ramblings. Nearly a year into the running of Total Ramblings. And I thought it was time that we did that. And it was this that prompted me. Plus, of course, we've lost Siobhan lately, and it was interesting to find this. I remember when it came out in 2018, I sent messages to everybody, all of my friends on Facebook, even people I'd never actually formally properly spoken to before in Messenger. They must have been so perturbed. I was trying to get the sales figures up. Anyway, I think this was the only release that Sounds of Thunder ever did. And this is one of my most prized possessions. Because there won't be any more. Somewhere out there, possibly on Siobhan's computer that Adam now has, is a recording of the 3rd episode. And I've got the other, possibly up to 3 scripts on my laptop somewhere. Now, a few years ago, when I was working in Scandinavia and I was earning mega money, I nearly, as a vanity project, I got prices from Siobhan. I was going to pay to have the other stories recorded, just for me, not for release necessarily, but just for me as a vanity project, because I was really proud of those scripts, and I never did. And that's something again that will never happen now. I'm sorry to keep going on about Siobhan, but it's had a real impact on me, bigger than I could possibly have expected. So that's where my mind is, to be honest. Also, I think I submitted an invoice for the scripts that got recorded, because it was like a pay. I think it was like a pay as they get used kind of thing. I don't think I ever got paid, but I'm not complaining, because if it was an issue, I would have made it an issue, and it's not an issue. I don't care. Because I'll be honest with you, I was just happy to have them recorded, because I thought it was funny, I thought it was brilliant, and any payment would have just been icing on the cake, really. So there you go. If I'd had money at the time, I would have probably invested in Sounds of Thunder, but I didn't, and I didn't. So there you go. That's what didn't happen. That is what didn't happen. Big gang of people coming up the path towards me. Hope they're friendly. We'll find out, won't we? Yeah, so as I said before, Dr. Sinister kept dinosaurs in dinosaur pits beneath his base. This is whichever version of Dr. Sinister it is. So sometimes, depending on the version, his base was on this island off the coast of Africa, or it was here in the UK and it extended for hundreds of miles. And this is a concept I took from my Total Ramblings books from the 90s. Now, in those books, the main character, me, and this was pre-Dr. Sinister, the main character had this base that you would access through his house underneath Portsmouth, and it was run by a sentient computer, and the base was self-replicating, and it went down hundreds of levels, and it extended in many directions for hundreds of miles. And even the main character, who I don't think I ever actually named in the books, even the main character didn't know how big the base truly was. Anyway, I stole that idea for Dr. Sinister and Sinister Incorporated, and indeed the base went on for hundreds of miles and nobody really knew how big it was or what was in it. So, but part of that base, and it doesn't matter which version of Dr. Sinister we're talking about now, part of that base consisted of dinosaur pits where dissidents would be fed to the dinosaurs, like in sort of gladiatorial style arenas. You could pay to view them on Sinister TV. But this is how, in my head canon, Dr. Sinister suffered his injuries. But it was always strongly hinted at that was the case. But I can confirm to you now, exclusively, that is in fact what actually happened. So there you go. I hope this little walk and pacing up and down and thought dump on the topic of Dr. Sinister, my alter ego, I hope this has been of benefit. Dr. Sinister as a character has been going for nearly 30 years. That's more than half my life. And in the past, I've put an awful lot of effort into him, and there have been times where I've just let him rest and forgotten about him. It's a bit like Alan Partridge, really. He's been going on a long time. Although obviously Dr. Sinister, apart from in a few cult circles, is not nearly as popular or well known. Up ahead here, so to the right of me, sorry, this is Beggarwood Park. I'll show it to you in a minute. But up ahead here is an old people's home. Now, wouldn't it be ideal? I'm not saying Liz is an old person, but she is a person that needs care. Wouldn't it be nice if they had the facilities to look after her here? Because this is a 10-minute walk from the bunker, from my house. You might have guessed, by the way, that the reason my house is called the bunker by me is another Dr. Sinister reference. And when I say bunker, I don't mean in a golfing kind of way. I mean in a besieged kind of way. When I say the word bunker, I'm thinking of a certain Austrian corporal in his bunker at the end of the war, shortly before he blows his brains out, because the situation is desperate. I'm not saying I'm an Austrian corporal, but I do feel besieged at home. It's my safe area, and I feel, like I say, I feel besieged. That's why it's called the bunker. It's an ironic kind of thing. It's not meant in a heroic way. It's meant in a last stand, last ditch kind of way. I don't know if you can see that, but that's Beggarwood Park over there. We'll have another look in a minute because we're going to be walking through it. That's a new building there. You can tell it's a new building because it's being built, and that's the clue. I used to do this walk every day back in about 2011, 2012, and I lost a lot of weight, and I should do this walk every day, but I don't because I'm a lazy arsehole. Dr. Sinister's quite lazy as well. He wants to take shortcuts to absolute power. The fact is, he's ridiculously rich. He was rich like Elon Musk before I knew who Elon Musk was. And he likes to take shortcuts. He doesn't really understand how the world actually works. Let's turn this camera around in case the kids think I'm filming them. Because I'm not. Well, not intentionally anyway. Yeah, so this is Beggarwood Park, and I'm not sure if I've shown you this before. We are here. My house, the bunker, is up here, over the road, across the road, and about here. And that old person's home I just showed you is about here. If only they had the facilities to look after Liz, I could literally see her every day. When she was in hospital here, in critical care, I would go and see her every day. But that's impractical now. She's about an hour's travel away. So she has someone to visit her every day, but it's not always me. I go 3 or 4 times a week. Because it's just too much otherwise. Okay. Now, That's Beggarwood Park. It has a little sort of auditorium kind of made of grass. I'm going to go down here to avoid these people. It's got playing areas, it's got exercise equipment. It's a quick way of getting to Sainsbury's, which is over there. And these trees here, these ones, this is an historic tree line, which I think, and when they say historic tree line, they mean it's been there at least 1,000 years. So there's an interesting fact that you didn't know before. Or maybe you did, I don't know. If you did, please write in, let me know. Answers on a postcard, please, to the usual address, which I gave to you earlier in the episode. Or write to me on Blue Sky, or Facebook, or Instagram, or Threads, or X, or Flickr, or LinkedIn. I think that's all of them. Yeah. Anyway, I should add this to my photo series of outside objects wearing clothing, because here we have a post wearing what looks like a Halloween hat. This is probably a suitable time to end this vlog. If you've listened this long, thank you so much. Please remember to do liking, subscribing, sharing, commenting, all the usual YouTubing stuff. Thanks for joining me for this episode of Total Ramblings. Hopefully I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.